Hello and welcome to 101 with Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich. I'm Lorna Virgili. Thank you for watching. Hello, Mr. Elrich. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good, good. This is our first show that we sit down for 2020. So, is it okay to still say Happy New Year?
I guess so. I mean, I've told folks in the Chinese community that they celebrate this thing for about 3 months. I love it. I mean, I keep thinking that one of these years I'm going to have multiple New Year events that continue past New Year's Day because I like the feeling of celebrating the New Year for a while. It's kind of cool.
Celebrating New Year. So you started 2020
Yep.
with your first State of the County address. You did mention that despite challenges, the county is strong, and you proposed a very ambitious future for Montgomery County where business climate has changed, more affordable housing, better transit infrastructure throughout the county, cleaner air, equity, and inclusiveness.
A few things, yes.
Just a few things, of course, highlighting your 7 priorities.
We did. Um, it was a chance to kind of lay out where we want to go. I mean, last year we came in, we had a budget that was largely formed before we got here, and it was very hard to, take a complete look at it. This is the first year where we are digging deep into the budget. We have department heads. I don't think any department heads, except for the couple that stayed over, have actually even been on the job for a year right now, which is kind of interesting. So we're looking at things new, and we're starting to make changes and to prioritize things. So there are a number of things that were important to us. Housing was a big one, and we're trying to create a fund that we can use and use it to leverage more money than we have. And it's modeled on programs that are used in other jurisdictions. We're planning on putting at least $10 million in this year and $10 million again next year. And we think we can get 5-to-1 leveraging on that, which would give us more flexibility than we have today. We're trying to deal with the issue of when housing becomes available on the market. We often don't have enough time, or nonprofits don't have enough time to put together a package that would enable them to act on the property. This would give us a fund that would allow us to do more rapid responses to things. We're moving forward with bus rapid transit, so we actually have proposals. We actually put together a request for proposals, and we now are looking at 14 proposals, and we're going to be evaluating which one or combination of them make the most sense, and then you're going to put that out for bid, and that's a really important step forward for the county.
So let's talk about, you were talking a little bit about the budget just now, but let's talk about the fiscal years 2021-26, the $4.23 billion capital
budget
improvements program, the budget that you did introduce the same day of the State of the County address. Of course, it addresses school construction from MCPS, addresses child care facilities throughout the county, Montgomery College, White Flint, transit-oriented for the region. I mean, it's everything that has to do with infrastructure throughout the county, and it does include additional funding for what you were just talking about, affordable housing. So do you want to recap a little bit that budget in particular, and also the fact that when it was first presented, the council president and vice president were pretty much in agreement with it? Where does it stand right now?
Well, I mean, I'd say the big thing that we're working on has been the school budget. I think people really misunderstood, even though we said pretty clearly what we were doing. We didn't know when we put the budget together what we were getting from the state for school construction, particularly with this bill called the Build Act, which is going to significantly increase funding for public school construction. And it hadn't even been surfaced yet, but we knew there was going to be something, but we didn't feel comfortable putting a number in the budget. And so we didn't fully deal with the school system's request, which was problematic, partly because it was $76 million over what we had anticipated, and partly because it was compressed into 4 years instead of 6. But now, having seen the bill, knowing that it's supported by the House leadership, the Senate leadership, and the governor, we are confident that we're going to be able to fund the school request for construction. So we're setting up a meeting because we actually have to figure out when the money comes in over the next few years and how we can tie it to the school projects so that we can complete the process. And so the council will be getting a revised budget. For the people who are concerned about that, the money is going to be there and we will be able to fund the increased school spending. That was the big thing. There was, people have pointed out that we didn't fund the tunnel under Wisconsin Avenue, and we've tried to point out that that tunnel was actually never in the county budget. And the county executive and no county councils actually ever put the money to build the tunnel into the budget. We didn't take anything out of the budget, but it's grown from a $15 million project to a $50 million project. And when I talked to the state, they said you might be thinking about 70 or 80 million. This is a huge lift inside of an already constrained budget. And when I say constrained, there are two things I don't think people realize about what's happening with our capital budget. When I was on the council, we were spending, we had about $340 million a year. That was our peak. And since then, we've been reducing the amount of money in the capital budget because people are trying to reduce the amount of debt that we're carrying and the interest payments. So by the time we get to 2025 and 26, that 340 is going all the way down to $280 million. So the amount that we've said we would budget based on a decision that was made in the last administration is coming down. In addition to that, one of the things that the county did, it was a council action, was we think give away way too much on subsidy to developers for affordable housing, more than it would normally cost us to get those units. And it's a problem because it means the county's going to lose $55 million in revenue over the next 6 years, which is a $10 million hit a year, basically. So the combination of reducing what we're bonding and other hits in our revenue makes it hard to fund previous levels of capital spending. So we're looking at it and we're trying to figure out how we're going to do all this.
Good homework for you. We got to take a short break. We'll be right back, and then we're going to be talking about the operating budget for fiscal year 2021. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
Introducing Right on Flex, Montgomery County Department of Transportation's new on-demand transit service to help you get around in defined Rockville and Glenmont-Wheaton zones. Riding the Flex is easy. Download the Right on Flex app. Select your pickup and drop-off locations within the zone. And go to your pickup location, a corner near you. And you ride for $2 or less. Visit rideonflex.com for service areas and hours of operation.
How do I take the 2020 census? In March 2020, every address in the country will receive an invitation to complete a simple questionnaire. And there are 3 ways to respond. Number 1, do it online. Number 2, call by phone. Number 3, send it by mail. For those who don't respond, a census taker from your community will follow up and assist you. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
If you think someone might be considering suicide or drugs, be the one to help them by taking these 5 steps. Ask. Keep them safe. Be there. Help them connect. Follow up. If you're struggling, call Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK or the 24-hour crisis center at 240-777-4000. Be the one to help. Learn more at betheone.org.
Welcome back to 101 with Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich. I'm Lorna Virgili. Thank you very much. Let's talk about now the fiscal year 2021 operating budget. It's a different budget. We have two budgets in the county. When you were hosting the budget forums back in the fall and in the community with
Right.
the county residents, it was spoken that you would be instituting the outcome-based budget. And this was going to be a budget that was going to be initiating the 10-year strategic plan. Is that where we are still today?
Yeah, we're moving that direction.
Okay.
It's hard to get outcomes until you actually decide all the outcome measures, and that's one of the things that we're in the process of doing, is requiring the people to develop outcome measures so we actually can see whether we're achieving the things we expect to achieve with the money that we're putting into projects. So that's one aspect that'll start getting rolled out in this budget. We are still waiting for final revenue numbers, so we don't know fully where we sit until the end of February, and that will have a big impact on what we're able to do. How much new we'll be able to do will depend pretty much on where these revenue numbers wind up. And I'm trying to be optimistic about that. I think we're going to have a better year than we did before. So, one of the issues we're dealing with are, shortfalls in a couple areas. One is, of all things in the county, we're dealing with fire overtime, which for as long as I was on the council was an issue, and that problem has not been resolved. So we are putting extra attention on figuring out how to bring the overtime numbers down, and it appears to involve a more complicated set of structural issues in the department that we're now delving into. And the other effect is the Ficker's amendment has, on the one hand, limits the amount of increase in property taxes to the inflation over the previous year. So last year we're limited to about a 1.5% increase over whatever we raised the previous year. But it doesn't protect taxpayers from, for example, 10% tax increases on individual accounts. And so we're looking at that and trying to figure out a way to make the system more equitable within the constraints of the amendment that we're working with. But just so people understand, if you only are getting a 1.5% increase over your previous year's revenues, in the county, construction projects are well above 1.5% inflation, and healthcare is generally over 1.5% inflation. So a lot of the things that make up the county budget are items that ordinarily exceed inflation. And the county's basket is different than a homeowner's basket. So inflation at a homeowner level may be much different than inflation at the county level. But those are issues we're dealing with. But we're looking forward to, I think, improvements in what we're going to do for affordable housing. We really are committed to this 3-year proposal to end homelessness in the county. We think we can start making progress down that track.
In reserves, will they be where they should be?
Our reserves should be about where they should be. We got through this year without having to do a mid-year savings plan. And in previous years, we've done mid-year savings plans as soon as the month after we passed the budget. So we've gotten pretty far down the road. So I feel, hopefully, if the disbursements at the end of February are decent, that we'll be in okay shape.
And that budget goes to, your proposed budget will go to County Council on March 16th.
Yes.
Let's talk about Vision Zero, pedestrian safety. It's been an issue, a problem in the county. Recently, you named officially a new coordinator for Vision Zero in Montgomery County, allocated about $266 million in the CIP for that as well. What are some of the challenges in looking back into past budgets? Also, a lot of expenses, investment on infrastructure engineering, and a sliver on education as well.
Yeah, so it's a complicated issue. First, I want to correct, the $266 million is for projects that are bigger than Vision Zero, but that incorporate Vision Zero aspects. I mean, if I had $266 million to spend on Vision Zero, there would be a whole heck of a lot more projects focused strictly on that. But it has to do with, if you're doing a project now, it now incorporates Vision Zero elements into it. It is complicated because people don't always cross where they're supposed to. Drivers are not paying attention to the road the way we would like them to pay attention to the road. Some fixes are very expensive, and so if you tried doing them, you could eat up a lot of money with very minimal impact. So we're trying to look beyond the traditional, for example, traditional engineering solutions. One thing that I've told the department I want to see is more of these, the use of these small poles, flexible poles to square off corners. Because if you square off the corners, people just can't slide around the corner without slowing down substantially. It'll require people to make turns a little bit more slowly, and I think that's really, really important on our major arteries and in the urban areas. And so we're looking at that, and a combination of that along with planters in order to make sure that drivers give appropriate consideration to who might be in the crosswalk. We're looking at improving lighting in intersections and in mid-blocks, actually put in a brighter, whiter light to increase the visibility of both cars on the road, but also of pedestrians to drivers. Because if you get far from an intersection, and in fact even in an intersection, it can be technically properly lighted, but it can still be really hard to see a person. And so we're looking at whatever we can do that doesn't require massive re-engineering, but that we can do on a more widespread basis and have a greater impact across the county. It's very uncomfortable for me, and I think I told people in my state of the county, people had suggested I make comments about Vision Zero in a kind of positive way, and I took it out because I felt like I don't feel good about where we are. 3 deaths in January alone. It's so not a good trend, and we're going to need to do a lot more than we've been doing. You talked about education. Maybe we can pick that up after the break.
Exactly. Thank you so much. We're going to be right back in just a minute with Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich. Stay tuned.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs.
And you learned how to not ignore yours.
I discovered how to make healthier meals.
And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
Did you know there are more than 10,000 county government phone numbers? But there's only one number you need to remember for non-emergency calls, 311. MC311 is Montgomery County government's online telephone information system. Need information? Have a problem or complaint? Trying to locate a county government facility? Call 311. The call center is open Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The website is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Hey, sweetie. What did you learn in school today?
I learned that the 2020 census counts everyone in the U.S. Where there are more people, there are more needs for things like roads, schools, and hospitals.
I learned that billions in funding goes to communities like ours because of the census.
I learned that the Census Bureau collects data about communities in all states and territories of the U.S. Statistics in Schools offers free educational materials powered by census data. Learn more at census.gov/schools.
The next 30 seconds can save you a lot of money. Just do your laundry in cold and stick to full loads. Auto-sleep your computers. Plug your gadgets in a power strip and switch it off when you're done. Headed out? Turn back your thermostat by 10 degrees. And drive sensibly. The more energy you save, the more money you save. Find other great tips at energysaver.gov.
Welcome back to 101 with Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich. I'm Lorna Virgili. Before the break, we were talking about Vision Zero, pedestrian safety, and some of the things that can actually be done quicker, less cheaper, if that is the right word. And one of the things that we've noticed as well is that the state has dropped speed limits in some main roads in the county. And you were talking about education as well.
So the speed limit is a big deal. Back during the campaign, I wrote the state a letter asking them if they would consider lowering the speed limits on the arterials, because when you go through downtown Bethesda or Wheaton or Silver Spring and other places that have high pedestrian volumes, the speed limits were still 35 miles an hour. And so we've asked them and they've agreed, and we've implemented lower speed limits. But obviously lower speed limits haven't been enough, and we need to do a better job of education. And it's got to be different, because when I was on COG, there was a big education campaign, and one of the comments that came back there was that there wasn't much impact for the amount of education we were doing, at least if you measure it in terms of dollars we were spending. So we need to rethink how we campaign and how we try to get people's attention, because education is really, really critical to this. And the other thing I try to remind people, because when you ask about pedestrian fatalities, I'll say that alcohol is related in a fair number, particularly when it gets late at night. And I want to remind people, good time to do this, that we talk a lot about don't let your friends drive drunk. You really need to think about walking drunk, because it is just as easy for a pedestrian who is impaired to misjudge the speed of the car and the distance of a car in crossing a street and put themselves in harm's way because they're not making good judgments, just as a driver who's impaired may not see, may not realize what's in front of them and make a bad judgment about their driving behavior. So I think it's important that everybody needs to be more cognizant of what they do. If you're out walking around and you're with friends and people have been drinking, you should employ your collective wisdom to make sure that somebody doesn't, cavalierly say, hey, let's make a run for it. I'm sure we can make it across. If you don't make it across and it's fatal, there's no satisfaction. It's not like you missed. This is missing severely. So we need to do more, and people need to be more aware.
Let's talk a little bit now about the General Assembly in Annapolis. You have done a lot of back and forth between Montgomery County and Annapolis during this legislative session, promoting the county's legislative agenda. We're not going to go through all the items, but and you already mentioned school construction. What are some of the items that you feel that are moving forward as far as the county's legislative agenda? And also mention the Community Choice Energy Act, the press event that you participated and testified. How would county residents benefit energy bills, clean and renewable energy?
So I'll start with the agenda in Annapolis. We did pretty well, I think, on the Build Act. I think we will get the money for the schools. It's been a concerted effort. One of the things I asked the county executives to do was to regularly get together. And so we've been meeting on Wednesdays, and we kind of talk about where the where issues are in the legislature, particularly the school, which affects all the counties in the state, to make sure that we're talking to each other, that we can kind of coalesce around similar positions, because we comprise the bulk of the legislators and the bulk of the residents of the state. And if we can send a clear message from the 7 counties that are involved in this, or 8 counties involved in this, we are more likely to have a more positive outcome at the legislature. So we're working on the Kerwin Commission report. It's going to mean a lot to Montgomery County in the long term. It will have costs for Montgomery County. But if you're going to make sure that education is more inclusive, that you have the tools you need to recruit and retain teachers, that's going to be really, really critical. You mentioned the Community Choice Act, supported by me and supported by the council. Basically what it would do is take the utility bills, and right now your utility decides who the primary provider is. And then if you don't like it, you opt out. And their primary provider is never a company that provides clean energy or primarily clean energy. What we want to do is with community choice, we would have the ability to pick the prime provider, and then if you want to opt out of that and go to a different provider, whether it's clean or not clean, you still have the same freedom to pick the provider, but we want to start with a provider that we think can provide the most clean energy to the county and the county residents at the best price. And if we're negotiating for the entire county, we're more likely to get a better price. And given our climate goals and given the climate emergency that we're in, it's really imperative that we get ourselves off fossil fuels. So we view this as an important tool for getting us off fossil fuels, for being able to negotiate best prices for our residents. And it doesn't take away people's choice, but it just means that we're starting with clean. If you want to choose something else, you can do that.
Let's talk about 2020 census. Starting on March 12th, all of the households throughout the country are getting that initial letter, invitation to participate. It's the first time in the history of the census that it will be electronic. It will benefit a whole lot of people, but also within our communities, it might be a challenge.
So the census is really important to the county. It determines levels of federal funding, it determines levels of state funding, it determines representation, particularly by districts in the county. It'll ultimately result in redistricting of the county council, for example. This is all really important, and so we're asking everybody to make sure you complete the forms, make sure your neighbors complete the forms. We're working with all these community groups to get that message out in the community, and we have places where people will be able to go if they don't have computers in their house to make sure they can complete the census forms. And of course, we want to remind the immigrant community that the question that had everybody concerned that Mr. Trump wanted to put on the census is not in the census. So there is nothing for anybody to be concerned about in terms of filling out these census forms. And if you don't have a computer, please don't despair. Go to the county website, find out where you can go, or go down to one of their organizations and make sure you know where you can go to file your census forms.
And that census website is montgomerycountymd.gov/census. Thank you, Mr. Elrich, for your time.
Thank you.
For you watching at home, any more information, visit the county's website at montgomerycountymd.gov. I'm Lorna Virgili, and thank you for watching.
In Montgomery County, we have a goal to reduce waste and recycle 70% of all waste by 2020. By recycling and reducing waste, we save natural resources and make our community even better. So recycle at home, work, school, everywhere, and keep recycling going. For more information, call the Montgomery County, Maryland Division of Solid Waste Services at 311 or visit montgomerycountymd.gov/recycling.
Keep it going.
Recycle more now.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
My grandma always says everyone counts, and everyone who lives with us is special. Like my aunt, who took me on my first bus ride to the library, or my older cousin, who walked me to my first day of school, even my mom's friend and her baby who live with us.
The census informs funding for schools, roads, healthcare, and more. So count everyone in your home, including all children on the 2020 census. It's your chance to help them for the next 10 years. You can respond online, by phone, or by mail. Shape your future. Start here. Learn more at 2020census.gov.